My brother got a standing ovation at his college showcase the same weekend I was supposed to walk across the stage in Washington, D.C. to receive the James Whitmore Award for Excellence in Public Service, one of the most prestigious honors given to federal employees under 30. My parents chose his showcase. They didn't even tell me until 4 days before the ceremony. I didn't scream. I didn't beg them to change their flights. I sat in my apartment in D.C. on the edge of my bed, and I felt something lock shut inside my chest. A door closing quietly. Finally. But before I tell you what happened at that ceremony and what my parents saw on the live stream from a hotel room in Nashville, let me tell you how we got here. Because this didn't start 4 days before the award ceremony. This started the day I was born into a family where the spotlight only had room for one person, and that person was never going to be me. My name is Meredith. I am 29 years old. I grew up in a mid-sized city in Ohio, in a house that looked completely ordinary from the outside. 2-car garage, marigolds in the front yard every summer, a welcome mat that said, "Home Sweet Home." My mother was a dental hygienist. My father managed inventory for a regional hardware chain. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling. We were, by every external measure, a normal American family. My brother's name is Garrett. He is 3 years older than me. I want to be careful about how I described Garrett, because this isn't really a story about him. He is not a villain. He is someone who was handed everything so consistently that he never had to become someone who worked for things. He has a beautiful voice. He genuinely does. He started singing in church when he was 7, and by the time he was 12, my parents had enrolled him in private voice lessons that cost $200 a month. They drove him 40 minutes each way to those lessons every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 years. My mother sat in the waiting room and read magazines. My father kept a folding chair in the trunk of his car, specifically for Garrett's outdoor performances. I tried ballet for 1 semester when I was 8. My mother dropped me off and picked me up. She never came inside. When I stopped going, because I realized I was the only kid whose parent didn't watch through the window, nobody asked why I quit. That is the kind of family we were. Not cruel in a way that leaves marks. Not the kind of thing you can point to and say, "Look, here is the evidence." It was subtler than that. It was the way my mother would retell Garrett's stories at the dinner table, laughing at the punchlines even when she'd heard them 4 times already. But when I tried to tell her about my day, she would say, without looking up from her plate. It was the way my father went to every single one of Garrett's a cappella competitions during high school, drove through snowstorms to get there, but when I was inducted into the National Honor Society my junior year, he said he had a work thing he couldn't move. I stood on that stage with a pin and a certificate and looked out at the audience. I saw other parents. I saw a dad in the 3rd row holding up a phone to record his daughter's face. I stared at the empty row where my parents should have been, and I kept my expression absolutely neutral. I had learned to do that early. Showing disappointment only made things worse. It made my mother sigh and say I was being dramatic. It made my father say I expected too much, so I stopped showing it. I folded it up small and put it somewhere inside me where nobody could see it. By the time I was in high school, I had figured out the system. My parents had limited energy and limited attention, and all of it went to Garrett, so I stopped asking for any of it. I got a library card and spent Saturday afternoons reading. I taught myself how to do my own taxes at 17, using a book I found at a Goodwill. I made my own doctor's appointments, filled out my own college applications, applied for my own scholarships. My parents bragged about this to their friends. "She just handles everything herself," my mother would say at neighborhood cookouts, smiling like this was a gift I had given them. "She's always been so self-sufficient. You never have to worry about Meredith." What she meant was, we never had to try. I got into a good state university on a merit scholarship that covered 70% of my tuition. I took out loans for the rest. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus library. I studied political science and public policy. I found, for the first time in my life, professors who looked me in the eye when I spoke, advisors who remembered my name, a work-study supervisor named Dr. Dom Okafor, who pulled me aside after I wrote a policy brief on housing access and said, "Meredith, this is the kind of thinking that changes things. You should apply for the federal internship program." I didn't know what the federal internship program was. I looked it up that night in my dorm room, sitting cross-legged on a twin mattress under fluorescent lights, and I felt something open up in my chest, a door swinging out. I applied. I got in. I deferred my senior year and moved to Washington, D.C. I did not tell my parents until I had already signed the paperwork. When I called home, my mother said, "Oh, that's in D.C.? That's so far?" There was a pause. "Garrett has his recital in April, by the way. He's doing the whole second act of Les Miserables. The director says he's never had a student with Garrett's range." "Mom," I said, "I'm moving to Washington." "I heard you, honey. I'm just saying you might want to plan your visit around the recital." I did not visit for the recital. The internship became a job. The job became a career. I worked in the Office of Community Development at a mid-sized federal agency, writing policy and managing grant programs for underserved municipalities. I was good at it in a way that felt almost accidental at first, like I had been practicing for something I didn't know I was practicing for. All those years of handling things myself. All those years of figuring out systems because no one was going to explain them to me, it turned out that was exactly the skill set for the work. I was 26 when my supervisor nominated me for the James Whitmore Award. The James Whitmore Award is given annually by a nonpartisan civic leadership organization to one federal employee under 30 who has demonstrated exceptional innovation in public service. Past recipients had gone on to senior positions, agency directorships, appointments. It was the kind of thing that opened doors that were previously not visible to you. I didn't tell my parents when I was nominated. I knew better. If I told them and didn't win, my mother would say, "Well, at least you tried, honey," in that voice that made it sound like losing was the outcome she'd expected. And if I told them and I did win, I had learned not to front-load my own good news in a family that would find a way to sand it flat. I found out I'd won on a Tuesday in February. I sat at my desk and read the email 3 times. Then I walked to the bathroom and pressed both palms flat against the cool tile and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like someone who had been waiting a long time for something. I called my parents that evening, both of them on speaker, the way we always did family calls now. "I won an award," I said. "A significant one. The ceremony is in D.C. on March 14th. I'd really like you both to be there." There was a pause. "March 14th, my father repeated. "Yes." Another pause. I heard paper rustling. My father checking something. "That's the weekend of Garrett's showcase," my mother said. "He's doing a faculty showcase at the conservatory. It's a big deal for him. His teacher has invited several people from Nashville's professional theater scene." "Mom," I said slowly, "I won a federal award. One of the most prestigious awards given to someone in my field. The ceremony is in Washington, D.C. We know it's important, honey." My mother's voice was careful, practiced. "But Garrett has been working toward this showcase for 8 months. You know how much his confidence has been." "Garrett is 32 years old," I said. "He's fragile right now. I'm not asking you to choose." I kept my voice flat. "I'm asking you to come to my award ceremony. The 2 events are in different cities. You can't do both. I'm asking you to choose me." There was a silence so long I thought the call had dropped. "Sweetheart," my father said finally, "you know we're proud of you. But Garrett needs us there. He'll fall apart without the support. You've always been the strong one. You can handle this." I had been the strong one because they made me be. I had been self-sufficient because they gave me no other option, and now they were using that against me. "Okay," I said, "we'll celebrate with you when you're home for Easter," my mother said quickly. "We'll do a nice dinner." "Okay," I said again. I hung up. I sat in my apartment in the dark for a long time. I was waiting for the grief to start, the familiar ache of not being enough for them. But it didn't come. Not in the way it used to. Instead, there was something colder, something that felt like finality. I picked up my phone and sent a text to my coworker and closest friend, a woman named Portia who had been with the agency for 4 years and who had watched me navigate 3 annual reviews, 2 restructuring rounds, and 1 particularly brutal congressional hearing. Portia, whose parents drove up from Richmond every time she had so much as a birthday dinner. Portia, who had met my parents once at a D.C. cherry blossom event. and pulled me aside afterward to say, quietly but directly, "Meredith, I want you to know that what I just watched was not normal." I texted her, "They're not coming. They chose Garrett's showcase." She called me in 45 seconds. "Tell me everything," she said. I told her. She listened without interrupting, which is a skill most people don't have. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "My parents are coming," she said. "Portia, they already asked to come. When I told them you'd been nominated," my mom said, and I quote, "If that girl wins, we better be there. They're coming, Meredith. The question is whether you want them sitting in the family section or not." I pressed my hand over my eyes. I was not going to cry. I had spent so many years not crying about this particular thing that I wasn't sure I still knew how. "I don't want to impose on them," I said. "They have been asking about you for 2 years, Portia said. "My mother keeps a photo of you from my birthday dinner on her refrigerator. You are not imposing. You are doing them a favor." I laughed. It came out rough, a little broken at the edges. "Okay," I said. "Okay," she said. "Now, do you have a plan for how to handle the ceremony logistics, or do I need to make one for you?" Portia's parents, her mother Dolores and her father Raymond, were the kind of people who made you believe that warmth was a personality trait rather than a performance. Dolores was a retired school principal who sent me handwritten notes on actual stationery when I accomplished things Portia told her about. Raymond had worked 30 years in the Department of Labor before retiring, and when I told him about my work on municipal housing grants, he leaned forward in his chair and asked follow-up questions for 40 minutes and didn't once check his phone. They were the kind of parents I used to watch other kids have and think, "I must be doing something wrong. I must be missing something, because otherwise, why wouldn't my own parents?" But I was not 8 years old anymore. I emailed the awards committee. I explained that my listed family guests would be changing. I removed my parents' names from the reserved seating and replaced them with Raymond and Dolores's information. I noted that they were the people who had supported my career in the ways that mattered. The committee coordinator, a woman named Ms. Tan, wrote back within the hour. "Understood. We'll update the records. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to make the evening special for your family." I read that last word 3 times. Your family? The ceremony was held in a historic venue near the mall. One of those limestone buildings with columns and chandeliers that make you feel like whatever happens inside them is gonna last. I wore a navy dress. Portia had taken me shopping 2 weekends before and stood outside the dressing room opining on every option until I found the right one. The morning of the ceremony, I got a text from my mother. "Garrett absolutely crushed it last night. Standing ovation. So proud of our boy. Hope your thing goes well today. We'll be watching if there's a stream." Hugh thing. After 29 years, it still managed to land. I put my phone in my clutch and walked into the building. The ceremony seated about 200 people, recipients, families, organizational representatives, a handful of elected officials. I found my seat in the recipient section and scanned the family seating area. I spotted Portia first, waving with the particular enthusiasm of someone who has consumed 1.5 glasses of champagne at the pre-reception, and then I saw her parents. Dolores was wearing a deep red dress and a corsage she had apparently purchased and pinned on herself because, as she later explained, she had gone to her first graduation in 1974, and she had worn a corsage, and she was not about to break tradition now. Raymond was in a dark suit, sitting very straight, the way a man sits when he wants to make sure the universe knows he is taking something seriously. He spotted me and raised his hand in a slow, deliberate wave, like a salute. Something cracked open in my chest. I turned back toward the stage before I started crying in the middle of the recipient section. The program was long, the way these programs always are. Remarks from a former senator, a performance from a student choir, 3 introductory awards before the main ones. I sat through it with my hands folded in my lap, my breathing even, the way I had sat through every uncomfortable thing in my life. Still and patient and quietly braced. When they called my name, I heard Dolores before I heard anything else. She made a sound. Not a word exactly, more like a sound a person makes when they see something they didn't know they were hoping for. And then Raymond started clapping, slowly at first, and then harder, the kind of clapping that is not polite applause but something physical, something insistent. And Portia was on her feet. I walked to the stage. My legs were steady. The director of the organization shook my hand and held it for a moment before giving me the award, a heavy crystal piece etched with my name that caught the light and scattered it. She leaned toward the microphone. The James Whitmore Award this year goes to someone who built a career out of showing up for communities that government too often overlooks. What makes this recipient remarkable is not just the quality of her work, but the fact that she did it without a safety net. She found her path largely on her own. And tonight we want to recognize not just her, but the people who believed in her. She gestured to the screen behind us. I had known this moment was coming. I had been warned by Mrs. Tan that the ceremony liked to capture the family's reaction during the remarks. The camera found them. The screen behind me, visible to every person in that room and to everyone watching the live stream, showed Raymond and Dolores. Dolores had both hands pressed to her mouth. Raymond had one arm around his wife and one arm in the air, still clapping. His face was the face of a man who is proud in a way that is nowhere to go but outward. The caption on the screen read, "Meredith's family." The room erupted. It was not polite applause. It was the real kind, the kind that surprises itself. I stood at that podium and looked at the screen and looked at them. And for the first time in my life, I understood what it felt like to be seen by someone who was looking straight at you. I don't know exactly when my parents turned on the stream. Portia told me later that her coworker had shared the live stream link on a civic affairs group she followed, and the clip of the family moment had already been pulled and posted on social media before we even made it to dinner. The caption someone wrote, "She won a federal award and her real family showed up." The people in the live stream, her best friend's parents, her biological parents were at her brother's singing showcase. The expression on that father's face, "I'm not okay." By the time we sat down at the restaurant, a place Portia had booked with a private room and a prix-fixé menu she had absolutely not told me the cost of, my phone had 23 notifications. I turned it face down. Raymond ordered a bottle of champagne and made a toast that I'm not going to repeat here because it belongs to that room and that table and those people. But I will say that it was the kind of toast where Portia had to hand her mother a napkin, and where I had to press my lips together very hard and look at the ceiling for a moment before I could respond. It was the best night of my adult life. I turned my phone over when we got to dessert. My mother had called 6 times. My father had called 6 times. My father had called twice. There was a text from my brother, "Hey." So there's a video going around. People are being pretty harsh in the comments. "Can you say something to explain? Mom is really upset. Can you say something to explain?" I almost laughed. There was a voicemail from my father. I listened to it with one finger in my ear to block the noise of the restaurant. His voice was tight, controlled in the way it gets when he is more frightened than angry. "Meredith, there's a video of your ceremony online and people are saying things. Your mother is getting messages. You need to post something to clarify the situation. Call me back. Clarify the situation." He meant, protect us. Make this go away. B. One more time, the daughter who carries the weight of everyone else's comfort. I deleted the voicemail. The video reached 200,000 views by midnight. Someone who knew our family from church posted it in a neighborhood Facebook group with the comment, "Isn't this Linda and Paul's daughter?" Didn't know they missed it. My mother's childhood friend texted her apparently. A former colleague of my father's called him. I know all of this because my mother told me in detail when she showed up at my apartment the following Saturday. She had not called ahead. She rang my buzzer at 10 in the morning, and when I answered the intercom, she said, "It's your mother," in a voice that contained years of accumulated grievance, all of it aimed at me. I let her up. She came in without being invited further than the entryway, looked around my apartment like she was cataloging it for evidence, and then turned to face me. "Do you have any idea?" she started. "Mom, people from our church, Meredith. People I have known for 25 years are sending me links to a video with a caption calling us bad parents. Are you asking me if I posted the video? I'm asking you why you gave them seats. Because you gave up your seats." She stopped. Her mouth tightened. We explained the situation, she said. Garrett needed. I know what Garrett needed, I said. Garrett needed you there because Garrett has always needed you there, because you have always been there. You built that. He spent 30 years building a son who cannot function without his audience, and a daughter who learned to function without one. And now you're here because the daughter's story got out and it's inconvenient. That is not fair. I know, I said. A lot of things aren't. She sat down on my couch. I had not offered her a seat, but I did not tell her to get up. I leaned against the kitchen counter and looked at her. She looked older than I remembered. She looked tired. There were things I felt, looking at her. They were not simple things, and they were not entirely cold, but they were no longer things that could be bought off with a dinner at Easter and a promise to do better. I want to fix this, she said finally. Her voice had lost its edge. Your father and I talked on the plane. We want to fix this. I know, I said. Then, I'm not ready, I said. I don't know if I'll be ready. I need you to understand that it's not a yes right now, and I need you to let that be okay without making it into something I owe you. She looked at me for a long time. The woman on the screen, she said. Dolores. Yes. She looked. My mother stopped. She pressed her lips together. She looked the way I should have looked. The room was very quiet. I didn't tell her she was wrong. I didn't tell her she was right. I just let the sentence sit there, which felt like the most honest thing I could do. She left 30 minutes later. We hugged at the door, briefly the way you hug someone, when you are not sure what you are to each other yet. I closed the door. I stood in my kitchen for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and texted Portia. She came. We talked. I'm okay, she replied in seconds. Mom wants to know if you're free for dinner Sunday. She's making her jerk chicken. I leaned against the refrigerator. Outside my window, D.C. was doing what D.C. does in early March. Gray sky. A suggestion of cold, a few early tourists, bundled against the wind near the monuments. I texted back, tell her yes. It has been 2 years since the ceremony. I was promoted 8 months ago. I manage a team of 11 people now, overseeing a grant portfolio that affects about 600,000 residents across 4 states. The Crystal Award sits on the shelf above my desk. I look at it sometimes, not for long, just a glance, and I think about the specific version of myself who stood at that podium. My relationship with my parents is what it is. We talk. Some conversations are better than others. My mother sent me a card for my promotion with a handwritten note inside that said she was proud of me, and I read it twice and put it in my desk drawer and cried a little, which surprised me. I don't think I'd forgiven them, exactly. I don't think forgiveness is always a door you can just open on purpose. Sometimes it's more like a window that rises by itself, slowly, over years. But I stopped waiting for them to be different, and that is its own kind of freedom. Small at first, then gradually larger, until one day you realize it has taken up most of the room in your chest where the ache used to live. Garrett is still singing. I hope he finds something that belongs to him someday, something he fought for himself, because I think that is the only kind of thing that actually holds. Portia's mother still has the photo from my birthday dinner on her refrigerator. I was there 2 months ago for a Sunday dinner, jerk chicken as promised, and I stood in that kitchen and looked at that photo, at my own face, and I barely recognized the girl in it. She looks like someone waiting to be chosen. I don't wait anymore. Raymond raised a glass at dinner that night and said, to the people at this table, and I looked around at Portia, at Dolores, at Raymond, at Portia's husband who had driven 4 hours to be there and brought a very sincere bottle of wine, and I thought, yes, this is it. This is the table I was trying to find. It was here the whole time. I just had to stop looking in the wrong direction. I keep the Crystal Award on the shelf above my desk where I can see it without looking for it. Some mornings I walk past it and don't think about anything. Other mornings I stop for just a second, and what I think about isn't the ceremony or the applause or even Dolores's face on that screen. What I think about is the girl who drove herself to the urgent care at 19 with a sprained wrist because she didn't want to bother anyone, who learned to read fine print and file paperwork and navigate bureaucracy entirely on her own, not because she was exceptional, but because no one was coming to help her. I think about what that girl did with all of it, and I think It wasn't wasted. None of it was wasted. There's something I've come to understand about the way choices compound over time. My parents made 1,000 small choices over 30 years to point the spotlight one direction and leave the other direction dark. Those choices didn't produce the outcome they expected. They expected a daughter who would always be available, always manageable, always grateful for whatever table scraps of attention came her way. Instead, they produced someone who had been quietly building an entire life without them. Someone who, when the moment came, did not hesitate. The choices they made created the exact conditions for the outcome they feared most, being left out. Not out of cruelty, out of consequence. That's the part that took me a long time to make peace with. Not anger. Anger is easy, and it burns itself out quickly. The harder thing was recognizing that my own choices compounded too. Every time I decided to keep going instead of giving up. Every time I chose the harder path because it was the right one. Every time I showed up for work or for Portia or for a grant application at 11 p.m., when I was exhausted and nobody was watching and there was no reward coming, those choices stacked up into something. Into the person who stood at that podium. Into the career. Into the table I finally found. I think about what Raymond said at that dinner. Not the toast, which belongs to that room, but something he said quietly when we were putting on coats to leave. He said, "The people who build themselves from scratch are the ones who know exactly what they built." I didn't say anything back. I just nodded. But I've turned that sentence over in my mind many times since. Because here's what I know now. Integrity is not something that shows up when people are watching. It's what you do in the years when nobody is. It's the rusted-out version of yourself that keeps pedaling even when the wheel is loose. Intelligence isn't just grades or titles. It's learning how to read a situation clearly, learning to see people for who they actually are, rather than who you wish they were. And the will to keep going, to not let the coldness of one room convince you that all rooms are cold. That is the thing that saves you. Not luck, not talent alone. The decision, made over and over, to stay in motion. Portia's mother still has that photo on her refrigerator. When I saw it last month, I looked at my own face in it and felt something I don't have a clean word for. Gratitude, maybe, but bigger than that, the feeling of recognizing yourself after a long time of not knowing where you were. I don't wait anymore for people to choose me. I already know who shows up, and that, quiet, certain, finally mine, is enough.